Very creative, Ashley. Okay, now we're live. Well, welcome everyone to Desert Palm United Church of Christ. We're very happy your spiritual journey has brought you here today. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I believe we're in the 5th Sunday of Lent. Is that right? I don't have my bulletin in front of me. I think that's right. So we're getting close. Next Sunday is going to be Palm Sunday, and then on Thursday, a week from this Thursday, we'll have our special Maundy Thursday celebration. We're going to be doing that a little bit different this year. Instead of all the tables set up in a huge cross, which is our traditional practice here, we have a bunch of special music, so we're going to be doing Church in the Round and facing this direction. Mark might have a word about that.
Yeah, all of Holy Week, there's lots of wonderful special music from guest artists as well coming in, and what we're doing with Maundy Thursday. I think it's going to be a wonderful worship experience that the chancel choir and others are working hard on. And so I really want to invite you to really participate and make that a part of your spiritual journey for this Holy Week. Thank you.
Now, I know I had a couple of announcements I wanted to wait. Oh, yeah. Okay. Do we have the video for that? Yep. Yep. So after church on Easter, make sure the kids know there's going to be a special Easter egg hunt. And that's our little visual for that. Well, as I said before, we were online. So for anybody at home, oh, yeah. And please sign the red guest books. I've been getting out of the habit of reminding everybody to do that. So it's a handy way to just keep track of who's here, and there's little boxes you can check if you'd like to learn more about the church or get a call from me, that sort of thing.
Did we have forms for flowers?
Oh yes, that's right. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, if you'd like to dedicate some flowers to someone on Easter Sunday, there's a form for that back there. You can fill out and leave it with the ushers, and then on Sunday, that person will be named in the bulletin. I think I did mention the one great hour of sharing. We're collecting the one great hour of sharing, yeah. So if you didn't get your envelope last week, that's over there. And I said this before we started, but I'll just say it again, that today our WISE ministry, which stands for Welcoming, Inclusive, Supportive, and Engaged around mental health issues, is going to be giving a special moment for mission. Many of you are aware of this ministry because we've been doing it for years now, but some of you are newer to the church, and basically, you know, the idea is to try to decrease stigma around mental health issues, to be more real and transparent and honest, to create space where we can talk about, hey, life is hard. Sometimes we get depressed, we get anxious. You know, these are natural things, and the way this comes up in the WISE ministry is, you know, oftentimes we'll say, you know, if somebody falls and breaks a leg, the church is great about bringing a casserole. But if somebody goes to the psychiatric hospital, you know, we just heard about this, somebody being hospitalized, you know, then we're not quite sure how to deal with it. And so in this day and age, in the midst of, you know, a national crisis around suicide, and all kinds of indicators, I think we all have a general awareness that post-pandemic, during the pandemic, post-pandemic, you know, mental health symptoms have been on the rise. It's just been a stressful, difficult time for all of us. So we want to make space to be real and honest with each other, because when we can tell each other what's really going on in our lives, we can actually then be there for each other, and that's what the church is all about. So we'll be exploring that a bit today. And with that, I think we can segue into our prelude. Go ahead, Ray.
Okay, thanks,
No,
Tom.
I just want to say, I don't want to single Anthony out, but I do want to say that since we're doing our wise moment, Anthony, when you need to get up and walk around, that's fine. This is a great Sunday. We're recognizing that, you know, we're all in different places on the continuum. Sometimes we want to get up and move around, and you're free to do that. Okay, Ray, go ahead.
Thanks, Tom.
Sure.
Last fall, the WISE team conducted a survey among our congregation here, and we listed 12 to 15 topics, wondering what might be of interest to people. And then the most common topic was loneliness. And so that's what we're addressing. The second and third most common topics were the mental health challenges, retirement, and depression and anxiety. So we'll be addressing those topics as well this year. As far as the loneliness goes, I have to admit I was surprised to see that as our number one topic, but on the other hand, loneliness is something that we've all felt at different times in our lives. The Surgeon General of the United States is Dr. Vivek Murthy. He wrote a book called Together, very simple title, Together. This was published late in 2020. He finished writing it just as the pandemic was shutting everything down, and he hated the word social distancing. He preferred to call it physical distancing. That's what was needed, was physical, but not social. Loneliness exists at three different levels. The closest intimate level of the people that you would name on one hand. Also your circle of friends is the second level. And then finally, the community level of social connection, and we can be lonely there. Now, this church does a great job at that level, the community level. And it's one reason the WISE team started meeting for just informal sharing and fellowship at Panera Bread, which we'll be doing after church next Sunday. So at this point, I'll stop and turn it over to other members of our WISE team.
Good morning. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Catherine. And we know that loneliness can strike in periods of transition, and that was certainly the case for me. My first job out of college was as a copy editor at a morning daily newspaper called the Huntington Herald-Dispatch. And the year was 1981. The paper was in a small town called Huntington on the Ohio River in West Virginia. And it was a friendly place. It was the kind of place where people would go home quickly over lunch or their dinner break and check to see if the tomato plants had made it through a recent downpour. And the newsroom had a great staff. They gave me lots of opportunities to edit as well as to do reporting. And it was a great place to start my journalism career. And I was very happy to get out on my own for the first time. I had never lived without family or a roommate. And I had moved into my new duplex apartment in a little brick house. And this was going to be the start of my grand bohemian adventure. But the newness and the initial excitement wore off, because this was back in 1981. And back in 1981, if you worked at a newspaper in the Eastern time zone, you had to stay up with the paper and not leave until 2 a.m. in the morning. And the reason for that was we were holding the paper open because we had to get the scores from the West Coast. And if you were on the news side, hey, there's something might happen, so you had to stay too. And so I did. And so for years, my hours were from 5:30 in the afternoon till 2 in the morning, with Mondays and Tuesdays off, because it was a daily. And this made it a little hard for me to connect with other people. Even the reporters had more normal days off and hours than I did. And so I have a lot of memories of trudging up the stairs in my little place at 2:30 a.m., flicking on the lights, and immediately turning on the radio because I just wanted to hear some noise and some voices. It just seemed so still. And, you know, sometimes the silence would be punctuated by the whine of a train whistle. So, yeah, that was a hard time. And I was a little surprised by it because I had grown up an only child, and I was used to amusing myself, but this was a little much even for me. But eventually, I became more involved with the community. I started taking classes at the university, started doing a little reporting on the side, and eventually volunteered and joined a church. And I stuck it out for another 2.5 years. And even when I moved on to work at a paper in Fort Lauderdale, and then even when I moved to Arizona and gave up journalism altogether, I still kept in touch with some of the friends I made there. And looking back, I'm glad I had that experience. I regard it as a growing experience. And I had to do it again, had to reinvent the wheel all over again when I moved on to my next job. But somehow it had gotten a little easier, and I knew what the loneliness was going to come and how I would manage it. So that's enough about me.
Good morning. In telling about my story of loneliness, I'd like to make the distinction between aloneness and loneliness. I see aloneness as a kind of social isolation, a disconnect from other people and from a community, while loneliness I see as a disconnect from myself. And my story is about a disconnect from myself. Along about, I have to ask, Jim is my keeper of dates. It was probably 20 years ago when I was teaching at USD. I was happily married. We had our grandchildren around us, but I just didn't feel right. Something was off in me, and I knew it. So I went to talk to my friend Rick Avery, who had been my supervisor in graduate school, a mentor, a colleague, and a wonderful friend. In fact, he was just out visiting us a couple of weeks ago. Rick was a clinical social worker, and I used to consult with him now and then. And I told him what was going on with me. I said, just something's off. I don't know what it is. And he looked at me and he said, oh, the other thing I said is, I don't think I need medication and I don't think I need therapy. I've had plenty of that. And he said to me, no, Ellen, you don't. He said, this is a spiritual disconnect. And he just picked up on it right like that. And he told me about his own experience of going through a hard time. He was drinking a lot, he was using drugs when he was younger. And he discovered a place called Spirit Rock up in Northern California. Spirit Rock is a Buddhist meditation center. I would call it an American Buddhist meditation center because it's not all it's a little looser than strict Buddhism, I'd say. But I started to go there. I came home, I said to Jim, I'm going to Spirit Rock for an 8-day silent meditation. And he looked at me like, oh yeah. And off I went. And it was 5 meditation periods a day, walking meditation, all different vegetarian meals, silence throughout the day. I came away from that renewed and energized and reconnected to myself. And what it was is it introduced me to a practice that I continue today, which is mindfulness meditation. There's a lot written about it. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Eckhart Tolle talks about the power of now in his book, and it's a good example of living in the now. Well, this practice has helped me to reconnect to myself because, as Simone Weil has said, attention taken to the highest degree is prayer. And that's what mindfulness is. It's attention to ourselves, to our body, to our thoughts, to our feelings, to our breathing. So I recommend it. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. From probably the only full-blooded Italian in the house.
Hi, I'm Rich, and I want to talk to you about a lonely time, and it's kind of like Catherine's story of a young adult and what it was like at that time. And it just kind of reminds me that, we know that young adults go off and they're lonely, but it really is a traumatic time, I think. I had a very stable childhood. I like to tell people that. I lived in the same house for 20 years growing up. My school was set up so that you would be with the same group of friends each year. You just stayed together as a group for 8 years, and then we went to the high school. A lot of us went the same. The junior college was closer to my house than the high school, and then I was 20 and wanted to continue my education, so I decided I wanted to go to California Lutheran College, which was, and I was living in Phoenix. And I didn't know anybody there. And so it was just a really strange experience for me. I certainly got homesick, and I called home and wrote letters and looked forward to those care packages. And the college did a really good job of connecting us to each other and all the new students. So I got to know a lot of freshmen, even though I was a junior. That didn't really matter. We had some discussion groups that helped us to get acquainted. I don't remember what they were, but that didn't matter because it was that connection that really helped. But in spite of feeling connected, in spite of my pretty strong faith for a young adult, I still felt very lonely. But that turned out to be an incredible 2 years of my life. That was 2 years at Cal Lutheran. Friendships developed that were so strong, and my faith developed. When I was lonely, I would sometimes go to the chapel and pray and sing and try to connect again, like with myself, and that was helpful. And I grew closer to God in those 2 years, so it was just an amazing experience. And so even though and I learned that loneliness was just kind of part of life in a lot of times, a lot of ways. I hated it, but I still realized that it opened the doors to new opportunities and new ways of relating to God and to other people. And so although I had a very stable childhood, I ended up moving 18 times in the next 12 years. 10 of those were major moves, which meant they were out of state. One was a major move to the Navajo reservation where I met my wife, Barb. And I'd like to tell you that after that, I was never lonely again, but that's not the way loneliness works, is it? And I know that a lot of you have had a lot more lonely times than I have and could be, and I just really want to acknowledge that and realize how that can be really difficult. And hopefully it'll, like it led me, it be open to God and to new situations. So, thank you.
Whenever we feel alone, forgotten, alienated, Jesus reaches out to us to lift us from our fears and our loneliness. Our weakness is turned into strength by Jesus' healing hands.
Our lives rest in the power and love of Jesus. Even though the times may get difficult, Jesus is with us, offering hope and power.
May our hearts be filled with love and strength as we respond to God's awesome love for us.
May our spirits soar as we are lifted from our anguish to pinnacles of hope. Go ahead and be seated. Even though it's our opening hymn, be it sort of a time of meditation and prayer. And during our hymn, we're going to sing together and turn that down. Sorry about that with that ring in there. And there's some prayer readings that you may connect with in between the verses. If you're on staff or a volunteer, work really hard here at church or just in your own life and your own journey. And then at the end, we'll all say a prayer together. And as we sing our opening hymn, standing in the need of prayer. I'm about ready to give up. It feels as though every time I turn around, someone or something is waiting to clobber me, to knock me down, to discredit me. I'm sick of it. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm in the middle of a deep, dark whirlpool, and I'm being drawn downward. I don't know if I can fight it. Help me, God, help me. Not my brother nor my sister, but it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. Not my brother nor my sister, but it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. I am responsible for the spiritual life of my congregation. I feel pulled this way and that way. There are so many demands on my energy and time. My family wants me to have time for them. Those in the nursing homes and those who live alone need a visit. I have a committee or a team meeting so many nights during the month. I have to keep up with my own spiritual life, my studies, my work for you. God, I am drowning. Help me, God. Help me. Not the preacher nor the deacon, but it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. Not the preacher nor the deacon, but it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. I'm having trouble making ends meet these days. The harder I work, the further behind I seem to get. There are so many needs in my family. I feel pulled and frantic that I will not be able to meet them. I want the best for my children, for my friends, for my family, but I can't seem to do enough. I feel as though I'm sinking and will soon disappear. Help me, God, help me. Not the stranger nor my neighbor, but it's me, oh God,
standing in the need of prayer. Not the stranger nor my neighbor, but it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer. It's me, it's me, it's me, oh God, standing in the need of prayer.
If you join me, we are all in need of your healing love. O God of mercy and power, so many times we are overwhelmed by things around us over which we have little or no control. Help us to place our trust in you. Guide and lift us when we feel as though we can go no further, for we all stand in the need of prayer, in the need of your healing and transforming touch. Amen.
I think we determined that we have no kids, so we're going to not call the kids up. We're going to go right into the gospel. Well, doesn't count me, but that's technicality. We're all kids at heart. Yeah, we're going to go right into the gospel.
The gospel reading this morning is from Matthew, excuse me, chapter 10, verse 10. And we're going to read all together. Jesus said, "He who receives you receives me, and he who receives me receives the one who sent me. The one who receives you receives me, and the one who sent me." When we open our hearts to each other, we open our hearts to God.
So the first line was actually the gospel, and then I was sort of riffing off that. My sister-in-law, Mary, married my sister Linda, and she's Mary Marin. Remember I was talking about, I'm related to Cheech of Cheech and Chong. That was Cheech Marin, so that's Mary. And so my sister-in-law, Mary, is a popular wedding officiant with her friends. She's done a ton of weddings, and we've talked about this over the years, and you know, and it didn't surprise me. You know, Mary is amazing. I'm going to be singing her praises today because she's one of the people that has helped me in my life during times of extreme loneliness. She and my sister have just been kind of angels for me. So I took notice the other day. You know, Mary's quite proficient at doing weddings, but she said, "Hey, I'm doing a wedding that's really special. Would you look it over for me? You know, I just want you to see what I'm going to say." And I said, "Yeah, of course." And it turns out she had created this wedding liturgy for her, this friend of hers, Chad, the son of one of her good friends. So he's a young guy, and I say young, though he's in his 30s, And that's young, right, for most of us. As I was writing this, I thought, is that weird to say somebody in their 30s is young? It felt weird to me, but I think that's just the stage of denial that I'm in about my own age. It's like, yeah, actually 30 is young. So back to Mary. She's working on this wedding liturgy. She's writing it for Chad and his now wife. They got married yesterday. And the wedding liturgy tells a story about how Mary was good friends with Chad's mom. They both worked at Starbucks. And at one point, Chad's mom said to Mary, hey, would you be willing to mentor my son? And Mary is a total rock star. She kind of skyrocketed up through Starbucks, and now she's a consultant. And so she was already consulting all along the way. She was coaching people and telling them how to believe in themselves. That's her skill. She just builds people up, and she can also fire you, when you need to be fired. But she's really just, she sees the what's inside you. She's like Mark that way. Mark is so good at helping people discover their gifts and let them shine. And so Chad's mom realized that about Mary, and I think she also realized, that sometimes, no matter how much you love your kids, sometimes as they're entering adulthood, they need someone else to mentor them other than mom or dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, whatever the case may be. They need another adult outside the family to mentor them. And so she said to Mary, hey, would you do this for Chad? And, again, Mary is an exceptional person. She's like Gandhi. I've said before that, they said about Gandhi, anybody who came within his gravitational pull would just fall in love with him. And that's the way it is with Mary. She has that effect on people. Not to say that everyone got romantically involved with Gandhi, although there are some interesting rumors if you read up on Gandhi's life, about what exactly went on in his inner circle. So, life is always more complex than we think. But I mean it in the best sense, that people that are drawn to people who exude love, because we need love, we hunger for love. We're talking about loneliness today, and I would imagine we've all had times in our lives when we have experienced deep and profound loneliness. And I think the reason I thought of Mary first today, when I sat down to write this sermon, and knowing that we were going to be talking about loneliness, is because, as I said, there have been times in my life when Mary and my sister Linda were just really there for me. They were after my first divorce when I was young, in my early 30s. It was a really tough time. I think Catherine mentioned that sometimes loneliness is associated with major times of transitions in our lives. And if those of you who've been through divorce know what that feels like, that it feels like your whole world is collapsing. And Ernest Becker talks about suicide in the context of our lives coming to an end of sorts. And he says, the danger of suicide is we literalize an ending. We think, oh, my life is ending. Everything I know, everything I'm familiar with is coming to an end, and we get tunnel vision, and we feel hopeless and despair, and people can end their life at those times. Becker's great insight about this is, our mode of living comes to an end. Sometimes we end a stage of life and we begin a new stage. And if we remember that, then we can avoid utter despair and hopelessness, and we can move on. I say all this because that's what happened to me in the wake of my first divorce. There was moments where I was dealing with suicidal ideation. I just thought, this is the end. I couldn't envision life beyond that. Ironically, at the time I was working in mental health, doing emergency crisis suicide prevention work. I had to evaluate people to determine, do you have to go to a psychiatric hospital to be safe, or can you go to our group home, different things like that. So that was my day job. It reminds me, recently I was at a really powerful, exceptional gathering about faith and mental health. Some of you may have heard that Bishop Dolan, the bishop for the Phoenix Diocese, he has had two of his siblings ended their life by suicide. So he has been drawn into mental health, the mental health crisis, and he convened a huge gathering of people, faith leaders from multiple traditions. And there was somebody from, I think, the Maricopa Health Department who gave an exceptional overview of statistics of the fact that, as I was saying in the words of welcome, that post-pandemic, during the pandemic and post-pandemic, we've really been in a time of rising mental health symptoms, and including a greater risk of suicide and just a higher incidence of suicide. Many of you know, because we've talked about this, that there's been a youth suicide crisis, and we've been engaged, Ray and Sonia, Valley Interfaith Partnership. There's been a lot of good work around that. So anyway, I bring all this up because the keynote speaker at this event, after giving this wonderful, amazing professional presentation, listing all the statistics and just making it clear to everyone who wasn't aware that, as a result of the pandemic and just societal unrest, all the different factors, there's been an increase in mental health symptoms. And then at the conclusion of his presentation, he said, and I just want you to know that as a veteran of the military, and after having served tours, I think he said in Afghanistan, maybe Iraq and Afghanistan, he said, I know firsthand what it feels like to feel suicidal. So here's this person who is giving this, amazing presentation, who also had the courage to say, hey, I know what it feels like because I have been there. So all of that to say, we're talking about the human condition, the human experience. It's not easy. We all know that. And we all experience loneliness. So I mentioned, that Mary has been there for me in a profound way, and I think that connects up with why we are here as a community, because this is what we do as people of faith. We care for each other. We're getting ready to celebrate Monday, Thursday, right? A week from Thursday. Remember that it's the command of Jesus to love one another as I have loved you. Traditionally, that involves the washing of feet. I mean, this is deep in the Christian tradition. Love and compassion, the recognition that we all have our brokenness, our times of loneliness, and we can be present for each other. And this is what faith communities do. We provide that space where we can come together and be present for each other. And it's all the more important right now because things really feel like they're wearing thin in society, right? We've all heard the mantra, the bowling alone, that society, the infrastructure of our community, our clubs. It used to be that everybody went bowling, and now, bowling is on the decline. That's been the metaphor sociologically for talking about the wearing thin of society's infrastructure. So hence, the Surgeon General talking about loneliness. People are feeling alone because a lot of the infrastructure for connection has gone away. This is part of the stress that we're all under, not to mention political unrest, right? Wars going on in the world, our awareness that there's something going on with the climate. These things are alarming and disturbing. I mean, it's no wonder there's a youth mental health crisis, because our youth are sensitive. They're not stupid. They see what's going on in the world. They're glued to their phones, but they're getting a lot of information from their phones, and they know what's going on in the world. Joanna Macy, I've lifted her up before, but I think this is worth repeating because I love what she has to say so much on the basic way that we frame our attitude towards all that's going on in the world, all those things that are upsetting. She says there's three basic ways of viewing this, the situation that we're in. One is to say business as usual. Nothing's really different right now, There's no such thing as global warming. That's a hoax, or that's just what those lefty tree huggers are talking about, Don't listen to the scientists. What do they know? Right? That's business as usual. That's one way of responding to what's going on in the world, and we can clearly see a lot of people are, subscribing to that worldview. But there's another worldview, and it's one that I think we are more vulnerable to as progressive Christians, right? And that's where we say, hey, this global warming stuff is real. I mean, we're in a crisis, there's ecological collapse. These things are cascading, we're paying attention, and we understand that, there's some problems right now, right? And it's consciously or unconsciously, as you try to kind of hold all that's going on in the world, that can lead you to despair, understandably, right? I mean, I've mentioned over and over how many people tell me, I can't listen to the news, I'm barely keeping my head above water. She calls that view that it's overwhelming in a bad way, that the great unraveling. The sky is falling, the ecological world is collapsing, war is spreading. There's nothing we can do. What can I do? So that's the great unraveling, and that's obviously, I'd imagine, we've all felt that way at times. But she names it. She says that is the great unraveling. It's a hopeless way of framing it. But there is a third way, and this is why I like her so much. She says the third way is what she calls the great turning. The great turning. And what she means by that is we recognize that, yes, there are major threats and challenges to life, to our survival, to our mental health. But we realize that as we face those challenges, we are not alone. That there are millions of other people around the globe who also realize that we are in trouble, and that together we are turning to face what's happening in the world so that we can respond collectively. This is Joanna Macy's healing vision. It involves all of us seeking to collaborate together to shift towards more sustainable, civil, compassionate systems of organizing ourselves. She birthed this vision when I was 10, so 50 years ago. In the early 70s, she realized that the ecological crisis is overwhelming, that people need support to deal with the ecological crisis. And so 50 years ago, she began creating this vision. We wonder, the problems that we face are so huge. How can I as an individual do anything? Bill McKibben's famous answer to that question is, stop being an individual. Realize that you are part of a community, which is part of a wider community, which is part of a global community. What can we as a global community do? That's a different way of asking the question. It can be quite beautiful when we remember to step back and take the vastness in. The part of the anxiety comes when we start to feel overwhelmed, we focus on one particular thing. And if that one thing is something that really stresses us out, then our entire existence is subsumed in anxiety. Our minds are such powerful, astonishing things, mysterious things. we're just beginning to understand how to use them, how to tap into the power of our psyches and souls. We're a young species. That gives me hope. You know, and at the start of any journey, it's easy to take a wrong turn. I don't know if you're like me, but when you start to go somewhere from home and you look at your GPS, until you start moving, it's impossible to know if you're supposed to go right or left. All right? You know, you have to start moving. It's like, oh, I went the wrong way, and you can correct. At the start of a journey, it's tricky. It's like when you're hiking in the desert. It's easy to become disoriented. I think the book of Exodus has something to say about that, if I'm not mistaken. We miss out on the wisdom of our spiritual tradition because we've been so pressured to take everything in some kind of narrow, literal way. If we learn to open up, if we really dare to be honest with each other, we can see that there are angels all around us. We can see that our trusted friends are like pillars of fire that can lead us through the dark night of the soul. I mean, who hasn't experienced that? You have to reach, that's when you call Mary or someone like her. You know, we heard the stories from our brave parishioners who shared from their personal lives of difficult times. You know, it's our loved ones become guides. And it helps as we're trying to keep our head above water to be a romantic. I think you all have gathered by now, I am a hopeless romantic. I mean, I can be real about war and genocide and everything else, but, I tend to hold out hope, right? In the power of love. And I think that's why I love this story about Chad getting married and Mary's wedding liturgy that she had me look over. Part of the liturgy she says, that she got Chad a card. He had been single for a long time, and he had really waited, for that right person. And so she found a card to congratulate him. And the card said, you're not just a drop in the ocean. You're an ocean in the drop. I think that's got something to say about our loneliness, right? It's so easy to feel like you're just a drop in the ocean. That's one of the repercussions of modernity, right? We realize that just the earth is a tiny speck. You could go for the speed of light, 186,000 miles per second. That's 4 times around the earth in 1 second. You could go that speed from one end of the Milky Way galaxy to the other. Guess how long it would take you to cross that, going that speed? 26,000 years. Speed of light. I mean, we're so small. As we're beginning to learn and understand these things, we're like, wow, what possible significance could we have, right? We're so small. But there's another newer insight that I think helps us take more serious stock of who and what we are. It's this notion that everything that has been called forth in the cosmos, everything, not just in that vast galaxy of the Milky Way, but the entire cosmos, that it's all integral to the whole, right? Some would even, so that includes all of you, each of you. Some would even say that our consciousness is the bridge between the whole external universe and the invisible internal spiritual world of psyche and soul. Joseph Campbell has that great book, The Outer Reaches of Inner Space. God only knows. But God calls the sparrow forth, and he has called you forth. So all of these notions together, that people are awakening in this great turning that more and more people are aware of life's deep interconnections, that we are beginning to glimpse and understand our deep, mysterious inner depths, and that somehow there's something profound about the particularity of each individual person. You know, it's funny, it's hard to talk about diversity nowadays without inciting a riot, right? Because there's so many people that are against equity, diversity, inclusion. But diversity, you know, we lose sight of the fact that the universe, the natural world, appears to be designed in such a way to bring forth greater and greater diversity. I mean, when we look at the natural world, that's what we see. Like so many snowflakes falling, each one unique. That is the process that has brought you and you and you, each of you. That process has brought you here. So I say that by way of saying, don't give up. We need you. You are part of the whole. Keep your heart open. The world needs something that only you can give. That is why you are here. You're not just a drop in the ocean. You are an ocean in a drop. And there's one more little detail about Mary doing this wedding. She got Chad this card. You're not just a drop in the ocean. You're an ocean in the drop. He called her up and said, hey, Mary, what you didn't know when you got me this card is that the woman I'm marrying, her last name is Ocean. It's as if we're all connected. May it be. Amen.
God is reaching out for you today. God offers healing and encouragement out of God's great love for you. It is a free gift, continually given by God. Let us in return offer our gifts, time, and talent to further God's realm in the ministry of Desert Palm.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. A long way from home. A long way from home.
Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. A long way. A long way.
From home.
happening in our lives, in our neighborhoods, in our country, in your world, we can be so easily distracted and overwhelmed by the needs and difficulties. Remind us again that you are with us, offering compassion, strength, courage, hope. Help us to place total trust in you as we offer our gifts, prayers for the healing, comfort, and hope for this day. Place your healing hand on our hearts and spirits and encourage us to rise and be strong in hope for the needs of others. Enable us to be partners in ministries of peace and justice in this world of darkness. Bring your light and power to us. Amen.
Since we know God is ever with us, if you'd join me in our closing hymn, Great is Your Faithfulness.
Progressive congregation. I could have sworn I heard some great is thy faithfulness. I don't know. For our benediction, I just want to repeat a couple of times that prayer phrase from our gospel reading. When we open up our hearts to each other, we open up our hearts to God. When we open up our hearts to each other, we open up our hearts to God. Let's continue to be a place where we open our hearts to each other. Amen.
Thank you.